Hey, what's going on, folks? We're going to be talking about rocks and recordings and all of that kind of stuff. Or not rocks and recordings, but types of rocks and how we deal with them. There's three different types of rocks. The three classes of rocks are called sedimentary rock, metamorphic rock, and also igneous rock. I'll let you read up on those things on the website, but basically sedimentary rock is formed from a bunch of, well, it starts off as this. This is sand. And what happens is, after a while, you kind of crush this thing down like a trash compactor or something like that, and it forms into a rock. For example, this is sandstone. It's just a bunch of sand that's been made into a stone. The metamorphic rock is formed under the Earth's surface, and so what happens is in the Earth's surface, a lot of heat and pressure come and squeeze this thing together, and this process forms rocks. And what happens in this process is you form these like ribbon-like layers. They're almost like stripes on top of a rock. And so this is kind of what happens with that one. They also might have shiny crystals in them, or the reason why they would have shiny crystals in them because they might be formed in the presence of minerals over time. And so this would be kind of like a rock that has shiny crystals. All right, and then the last one is the igneous rock. Now the igneous rock is probably the most important one to Hawaii because all we have is igneous rock. Igneous rock comes from magma, and then magma is what cools and hardens, and it turns into rock. So it comes straight out of volcanoes. By the way, when it's in the volcano, it's called magma. When it's outside the volcano, it's called lava. All right, cool. Basically, what happens is it looks kind of shiny and glassy, or it has a lot of air bubbles in the process. So there are different things to look for inside of rocks. One is crystals. I showed you this one already. This rock has some crystals in it. That's kind of an indicator of what kind of rock it is. Another thing you might want to look for is fossils. I have a rock that has a fossil in it. This one has a fossil of a leaf, if you can see that. The other one is gas bubbles. You might want to look for gas bubbles, and this one should be familiar with you. This is a rock that is from Hawaii, actually. The other one is glassy surfaces. You look at the surface of the rock, and if it's glassy and whatnot, that's a good indicator of what kind of rock it is. Ribbon-like layers, I think this might be a good example that I have, where it has like ribbon-like layers. And the other one is like sand or pebbles and that kind of stuff inside of it. That would be something that looks like this. Now you would argue that this has ribbon-like layers, but actually if you feel it, it feels kind of like sandpaper. This feels like the kind of stone that you would use to, you know, scrub your feet or something like that. Maybe make things smooth. All right. So let's talk about types of rock, or we'll talk about how rocks change. All right. Rocks can change, and there's a bunch of different processes that takes one kind of rock to another type of rock. Rocks change from sedimentary rock to metamorphic rock to igneous rock, and it can even go vice versa. You can go igneous rock to sedimentary rock, or igneous rock to metamorphic rock. So rocks can change from one class to another, and here's the different processes that they go through. First is heat and pressure. So you have an igneous rock that's being pushed down into the earth, and there's a lot of heat and a lot of pressure, and that creates a metamorphic rock. Another one, and this is the precursor to igneous rocks, because igneous rocks come from magma. So how do I turn any kind of rock into magma? Well, I melt it. I put it between 600 and 1300 degrees Celsius, and then basically my rock, metamorphic rock or igneous rock or sedimentary rock even, turns into liquid rock. All right, the other process is if you want to turn magma into a rock, you basically take it outside of the earth and you put it outside, and then it cools down. So that's the cooling part. So the magma comes up, the rock comes down, and then this part cools off, And then this is called extrusive igneous rock. By the way, there's a different type of igneous rock. It's called intrusive igneous rock. And I'll let you read about why or what those are made of and why we call the difference between extrusive and intrusive. All right. Now, one way to turn a rock into this, because this is the beginning of your sedimentary rock, is you need to make the rock into sediment, which is basically take a rock and turn it into a bunch of smaller rocks. The way to do that is you weather and erode it. So what happens is you've got a rock and you got rain and you got wind and it breaks up into smaller pieces, and that smaller pieces is called sediment. We like to call it sand or just smaller rocks, and that's how you can break these things down. So that's the way to start turning any rock into the building blocks that you need to make a sedimentary rock. Now, after you have a bunch of sediment, you have this stuff, I need to be able to turn it into something like this, a rock that is made of sand. So, in that process, it's called compacting and cementing. You basically take the sediment and then through a process of compressing it and cementing it together, it forms a rock, a solid thing, and then that would be your compacting and cementing, which is a little bit different from heat and pressure, which is, you know, when you're pushing these layers down deep into the earth and there's a lot of heat and a lot of pressure going on with this thing. All right, let's talk about the rock cycle diagram. Now, the rock cycle diagram is basically, I'm showing you how one rock will change into another. So, if you start anywhere in this diagram, for example, metamorphic rock, which includes some quartz, and you have marble. I think my marble is over here. No, that's slate. Ah, here, this looks like a red marble. All right, you have marble and you have genus. I don't know how to pronounce that one. Anyway, what you'll want to do is, if you want to turn a metamorphic rock into an igneous rock, then what you need to do first is you need to melt it. Boom. When you melt it, it turns into magma. Magma isn't a rock, it's just this middle stage before you get something. So you can turn it into magma, and then through a process of cooling, right, cooling that thing off, that thing turns into extrusive igneous rock, or intrusive igneous rock, depending on how you cooled it. All right. You can turn that igneous rock back into magma by melting it again, just like what you did with the metamorphic rock. So we've brought the metamorphic rock down to igneous rock. Now, if I want to take a metamorphic rock and I want to turn it into a sedimentary rock, which is right here, which includes a conglomerate. I'm not sure if I can find my conglomerate very quickly. I think, no, it's not here. It's got to be someplace. This might be a conglomerate. No, that's not it. All right. Mr. Dalday has a weird rock collection. Ooh, this one feels good. All right. Limestone or sandstone. Then what I would need to do is, first I need to have the basic building blocks of a sedimentary rock. And the basic building blocks of a sedimentary rock is sediment. Lots of small pieces of minerals and sand and small pieces of rock and all the other kind of stuff that gets stuck in there. Which is why if you see a fossil in a rock, that is most likely a sedimentary rock, because the sedimentary rock basically takes a bunch of stuff and pushes it together and makes a new rock out of that. So in order to get the metamorphic rock down to the sediment, I need to weather and erode it. Boom, turns into sediment. Then through compacting and cementing, it turns into sedimentary rock. I can take that sedimentary rock and turn it back into sediment by weathering and eroding it. Boom. I could even take an igneous rock and turn it into sediment by weathering and eroding it. Done. Then I can take that sediment and I can just leave it as sediment, or I could turn it into a rock by compacting and cementing it, and it turns it into sedimentary rock. All right. Now, if I start off with any of the other rock stages and I want to get to a metamorphic rock, I can take that sedimentary rock, I can push it deep down into the earth and add a lot of heat and a lot of pressure, and eventually I will create a metamorphic rock. I could also take my igneous rock, which is obsidian or granite or basalt, there, and turn it into a metamorphic rock by taking it, pushing it deep down into the earth, and putting a lot of heat and pressure on it, and therefore it turns into a metamorphic rock. I think that that's pretty much it. I know I covered this very quickly. What I would encourage you to do is I'm covering this as kind of as a quick highlight of what's going on. What I want you to do is explore this website, read all of the terms, because there's going to be a test on this, or at least a quiz, or a homework assignment, or something like that. All right, have fun.